What is up, everyone? It's Quinn here, and in today's video, I'm going to be going through 5 dynasty buy lows after the NFL free agency. Going to be talking about at least one player at every position, just guys that I think are currently undervalued right now. If you enjoy the video, hit that like button, subscribe. But let's dive right into my first buy low. We're going to start off at the quarterback position, and it is going to be Dak Prescott. Now, when I'm talking about these guys' current values, I'm going to be using keep, trade, cut, kind of like a crowdsourced ADP. It's not perfect, but I do think it's pretty solid just in terms of like getting a general sense of these players' values. So Dak Prescott on Keep Trade Cut is valued as the quarterback 22. And in terms of startup value, he's like a round 5-6 pick. And here are just some of the quarterback names that are ranked ahead of him right now. You have guys like Bryce Young, Jared Goff, Cam Ward, Michael Penix. I just think if you can get a quarterback of Dak's quality at like the 5-6 turn in startups, I think that's too good of a value to pass up. We have seen 7 seasons with Dak playing at least 12 regular season games on a point per game basis. In those 7 seasons, he has been the QB3, QB4, QB9, QB9, QB11, QB13, quarterback 16. So if you are getting Dak for the majority of the season, you can pretty much bank on him being a solid quarterback 1 for you. At worst, he's like a higher end QB2. And he's also flashed some upside, right? Multiple top 4 quarterback seasons on a point per game basis. 2024 was not great. When he was out there, he wasn't playing super well. Then he had his season, come to a close with an injury. But it's 1 year on like a pretty long track record for his career. And in 2023, probably one of the more undervalued seasons I can remember. The dude threw for over 4,500 yards, 36 passing touchdowns, and outside of CeeDee Lamb, like his weapons were pretty much non-existent, and so he put together an amazing stat line without a ton of help around him. He has 3 separate seasons throwing for at least 4,400 yards and hitting 30 passing touchdowns, and then you're just looking at some of the quarterbacks around him, like I talked about. Maybe his age is a factor here, right? Like he's 31 years old, but you have guys like Jared Goff, Baker Mayfield. Jared Goff's 30, Baker Mayfield's going to be 30 in April. And then you just look at like his production compared to theirs. Jared Goff has never had a better season than quarterback 7 in points per game, and that's while playing with better weapons. Baker, coming off an amazing season, but that was his 1 season finishing as a top 15 quarterback in points per game. Is he all of a sudden going to be a consistent like top 5 guy moving forward? I'm not sold on that. And so I'm taking Dak over some of these other veterans, especially a guy like Jared Goff, someone who just has not flashed the same upside and is, in the same age range. And then even some of these like younger, unproven options, like a Bryce Young, a Michael Penix. Sure, if they hit and end up being solid starters, like you're going to have them for longer, right? They're much younger than a guy like Dak, but they don't even come with a ton of upside. Like I could understand taking a younger option if they have a much higher ceiling. But I don't know, like Michael Penix, I don't think he's going to have the rushing production to have that kind of ceiling. I just don't think Bryce Young has the physical tools to be like a super high upside option at the quarterback position. So if I can just like lock in Dak in like his early 30s, giving you a solid quarterback 1 production, I'm going to take that over a lot of the guys, going ahead of him. And you could potentially be getting something on top if you're giving up, a Michael Penix, a Jared Goff, a Bryce Young to bring in a guy like Dak Prescott. So at the quarterback position, I do think he is the best value right now. Then looking at a running back here, we have Christian McCaffrey. And he's obviously going to be, a pretty polarizing player. He's currently valued as the running back 17 and a 6-7 turn startup pick. Now, there's going to be obvious risk with Christian McCaffrey, right? He has played 7 or fewer games in 3 of the last 5 seasons. So injuries have been tough. They've really just like derailed complete seasons for you. If you have Christian McCaffrey on your roster and he's injured any of those 3 years, it's probably going to be pretty tough for you to overcome that. However, I don't think there's a single active player that has the upside of Christian McCaffrey. I think a healthy CMC is like probably the most valuable asset when it just comes to winning fantasy matchups. Like when Christian McCaffrey can hit that 23, 24 plus point per game upside, like no one's going to drive winning in the way that he can. When we look at his last 4 healthy seasons, 2018, 24.1 points per game, the running back 2. 2019, 29.3 points per game, the running back 1. 2022, 21 points per game, the running back 2. 2023, 24.5 points per game was the running back 1 in points per game. And it's kind of weird because he's had these 3 seasons where, he's playing under 7 games. But then in the other 4, it's not like he's like consistently missing time. Like he's played in at least 16 games in the other 4 seasons where he has been able to stay healthy. To put into context how CMC is valued compared to some of these other veteran running backs, Saquon Barkley is valued as the running back 4 right now and a 2-3 turn in startup drafts. And he's 28 years old. CMC, also 28 years old, has flashed a higher ceiling than Saquon Barkley and goes 4 rounds later in drafts. Now, obviously, Saquon doesn't have the same injury concerns. He's had his own injury issues, but he's coming off a great season. He was the running back 1 in points per game, was able to stay very, very healthy. But if you can get that kind of value, I understand the injury risk is there, but like if CMC is just straight up healthy for a season, you're pretty much getting the value that you would have to really pay up for in a guy like Saquon, and you're just getting it at such a discount. And I do understand, like he's 28 years old. If he has another injury-riddled season, the value is probably going to tank. But if we are trying to win games in Dynasty, and you're comparing him to guys like James Cook, Kenneth Walker, who are like 25, 24, I get you're going to have those guys for longer, but it comes down to like, would you rather have back-end RB1 production for a few more years, or do you want the player that's going to be able to deliver like a league-winning season in any of the next 2, 3, 4 seasons? Even, guys like Josh Jacobs are valued ahead of him. Jacobs is like 1 year younger and cannot touch the ceiling of Christian McCaffrey. Derrick Henry at 31 years old is back-to-back with Christian McCaffrey at the running back position. I don't know how you rationalize a 31-year-old Derrick Henry over CMC. Like, I understand he's been an Iron Man, he's been insanely durable, but he can't touch the ceiling of CMC. And even if McCaffrey's injured for a couple of seasons, like, you just have so many more bites at the apple where he could still have that high ceiling when healthy for the next 3-4 seasons, whereas it's tough to see Derrick Henry doing this for like over 2 more years at this point. So I just think if you want someone who has true league-winning upside in a win-now spot at a discount, CMC is that guy. Because I do just think like the comparison to Saquon is there, where if they're both healthy, I think CMC is the better option. They're the same age, and you're getting CMC at a severe discount. Also, if you're like a win-now team and you maybe kind of want to retool, you could trade Saquon for CMC plus and kind of, also prepare for the future while potentially getting the same or better production in the short term. So he's one of my running backs here. Then we have a buy low wide receiver, and that is going to be Josh Downs. He is currently valued as the wide receiver 42 and an 8-9 turn in startup drafts. I really liked Josh Downs as a prospect. He had a great true freshman season at UNC and then followed it up with a really strong senior season. I thought it was crazy he fell to the 3rd round. I didn't really think he'd get out of the 2nd. So I love the value that the Colts got. Didn't really love the landing spot, but in most situations, talent is able to win out. He had a fine rookie year, 68 receptions, 771 receiving yards, 2 touchdowns, but had a really strong year 2. Averaged 13.1 PPR points per game, was the wide receiver 28 in points per game. Played in 14 games, caught 72 passes for 803 yards and 5 touchdowns. And so like the numbers look solid. The fantasy production was there, like a high-end wide receiver 3. And he did it in a pretty unfortunate situation. It was not a good passing attack. They had the 6th fewest passing yards in the NFL. They had the 8th fewest passing touchdowns. They had the 7th fewest pass attempts. So there wasn't a ton of volume. There wasn't a ton of, volume in terms of receiving yard opportunities. And then there also just wasn't a ton of touchdown upside. So all across the board, not a great situation. He still was commanding targets at a very high level. He had the 6th highest target rate in the NFL. He was top 20 in target share, and he was 22nd in yards per route run. Josh Downs is still only 23 years old, and we know that situations can change. So maybe heading into 2025, it's not looking great, right? Richardson's probably on his last year if he can't turn things around. But like as soon as 2026, this could be a completely different situation. And he's so young where he still has a lot of really quality seasons ahead of him. And if he's able to be a high-end wide receiver 3 in a bad passing attack, I think he's someone where if this situation comes together, he could be a very consistent, just safe wide receiver 2 option. And for a player with that type of, upside and safety to be valued as like a mid-tier wide receiver 4 at only 23 years old after being a high-end wide receiver 3, I just think the market is straight up wrong on Josh Downs, and it's probably just because of the short-term situation. But like I said, things can shake up very, very quickly, and all of a sudden Josh Downs is going to be super, super valuable for Dynasty. And then now the one tight end I have here is going to be Evan Engram. He is currently valued as the tight end 14 and is an 11th round pick. And he's kind of someone where I thought maybe people would really overreact to the landing spot with the Broncos, but there hasn't been like a massive shift. And I just think he's a great win now option at the tight end position. He's 30 years old, so getting up there in age, but still should have at least a few quality seasons left in him. Signed a 2-year, $23 million deal with the Broncos. And I think pretty much everyone was looking at Denver as like the dream tight end landing spot for this draft class. So whether that was Tyler Warren or Colston Loveland, like if the Broncos were drafting someone in round 1, that was viewed as like an amazing landing spot for either of those tight ends, or honestly, even someone in the later rounds. Sean Payton has talked about wanting a joker at the tight end or running back positions. This is not a team with a ton of quality weapons. So if they were spending, a high pick on a tight end or, spending money on a tight end free agency, they're probably going to be stepping into a pretty decent workload. And I feel like that's kind of Evan Engram at this point. In his 2 healthy seasons with the Jaguars, he was the tight end 7 at 10.4 points per game, and then the tight end 4 at 13.6 points per game. And he did that without ever exceeding 4 receiving touchdowns. So he didn't hit in the touchdown department and was still a top 7 tight end and then a top 4 tight end in points per game. I think he has a legit opportunity here to be a high-end tight end 1 for at least a couple of seasons here with the Broncos. You look at some of the tight ends going in a similar range. In terms of like a guy who's kind of in the same age department, you have Mark Andrews, who I believe is 29. Evan Engram is 30. I'd probably lean Evan Engram at this point. Like I know Andrews had a strong close to the season, but it was heavily dependent on touchdowns. I think Engram could be a guy who hits in the touchdown department and still has that volume. And you have some younger options in the same range: Isaiah Likely, Cade Otton, Pat Freiermuth. I think Likely is interesting, especially, once Mark Andrews kind of moves on. But guys like Cade Otton, Pat Freiermuth, I know they're younger, you're going to have them for longer, but are those guys ever going to be more than like back-end tight end 1, high-end tight end 2 production? Like that's just not like winning assets, right? Like if you're given 10 points per game, 9 points per game, it's like, oh, you might be a back-end tight end 1. That's not making any sort of difference in your fantasy lineups. So even if the window's shorter for Evan Engram, if I can get a couple of 12, 13 point per game seasons in a good landing spot, I'm going to take that all day over some of the younger options who are just never going to hit that type of ceiling. So Evan Engram would be my buy low tight end. And then my final buy low player is going to be Javonte Williams. Now, when I saw that he signed with the Cowboys this offseason, I thought people would really overreact. We can see this where heading into the draft, guys kind of are holding the number 1 spot on a depth chart, and people think that, they're going to be guaranteed to be the starter. But things can change. If you're not a super talented running back, like you can be replaced. It's not like you're locked into that role. But people didn't really overreact the way I thought they would. Like Javonte is still being valued as running back 48 in the 14th round, like in the same range of some other handcuff running backs. Like he's between Rachaad White, who's going to be pinned behind Bucky Irving, and Ray Davis, who's currently pinned behind James Cook. So it doesn't really seem like people are just penciling him in to be the clear running back 1. And admittedly, like Javonte hasn't looked great since he tore his ACL in his second year. He was a round 2 pick, productive as a rookie, was the running back 2 in points per game, efficient, 4.5 yards per carry. Then you look at 2023 and 2024, he's been the running back 31 and 36 in points per game, and he has not even hit 3.8 yards per carry in either of those seasons. He was at 3.6 in 2023 and then 3.7 in 2024. I think a lot of people are just penciling in the Cowboys to take, a running back with one of their, earlier round picks. And I just don't think that's a guarantee. Like I've seen a lot of mock drafts, mock drafters are just penciling that in, like that is going to happen. The Cowboys within the last year have not shown that they value the running back position at all. Like they were going into 2024 with their top 2 running backs as a washed Ezekiel Elliott and then Rico Dowdle, who was like an undrafted free agent. In his first 4 NFL seasons, he had 113 total touches. Like that was a gross looking running back room. And they seemed totally fine heading into the season, with that going on. You look at Rico, he came in, he played well, saw almost 18 opportunities per game, was the running back 24 in points per game, and that was without hitting in the touchdown department, only scored 5 touchdowns. He was an 1,000-yard rusher. And so I just don't think that guarantee's there. They just, invested nothing into the position and got pretty solid results. I mean, they didn't even care enough about Rico Dowdle, who produced for them, to pay him like a year for $3 million. I think he signed 1 year, $2.7 million with the Panthers. So they go out, they bring in Javonte Williams. Like maybe they spend a day 3 pick on a running back, but I just think Javonte Williams could truly be stepping into the 2025 season in a very similar situation to Rico Dowdle last year, where it's like, there's just no one else on the depth chart. Like this guy could get fed. And if you can get that for someone who's valued as like the running back 48, I think it makes some sense. I'm not saying this is guaranteed to happen. They could still sign another running back in free agency. They could end up drafting someone. But even then, like worst case scenario, he's just a handcuff on a pretty decent offense. And like I talked about, in the range he's going, like Rachaad White, Ray Davis, that's kind of what those guys are also at this point. So you have the upside of like a Rico Dowdle type season if they just don't invest in the position. And then the downside is he's just kind of a handcuff on a good offense, which is still, somewhat valuable for fantasy. So that is going to wrap it up for my 5 buy low players. We have Dak Prescott at quarterback, CMC, Javonte at running back, Josh Downs at wide receiver, and then Evan Engram at tight end. Let me know your thoughts. If you enjoyed, hit that like button, subscribe. Thank you all for stopping by, and I will see you in the next one.